A singular and powerful creature, known throughout the world as the King of Beasts, the dragon is instantly recognizable as one of the mightiest and terrifying mythical beasts humanity has ever conceived. Malevolent and benign, wise and bestial, the dragon is perhaps the most diverse species of creature to have ever walked the earth. This mighty reptile has left its mark on the collective psyche of our species, and with good reason. Villages have been terrorized, cities destroyed, and, on occasion, entire civilizations brought to ruin by these creatures and their might. The power this creature wields comes from a combination of its large size, powerful muscles, impenetrable skin, and their unique ability to breathe fire. Beyond these abilities, there exist far more singular examples of these creatures that can wield magic, change their form, and even communicate with human beings. The arsenal available to these creatures usually sees them fulfilling their needs in a particularly violent manner. Some more primitive creatures will often snatch cattle, hawk-like, from the sky, while others have more discerning tastes and are bent on taking vast amounts of material wealth, and yet others desire more esoteric things, such as the life of a maiden. The terror and oppression inflicted by these creatures often sees human beings rising up to stand against these creatures in all their forms. Heroes both unlikely and not, as well as professionals, are often tasked with having to slay these dreadful beasts, and unfortunately, some are more successful than others. Of course, not all dragons are malevolent. Some have a more somber nature to their character, favoring wisdom and knowledge above all else. While this intellect can and often does lead the dragon to take on a more sinister role than its otherwise impressive physique would allow, there do nevertheless exist dragons who are drawn to the higher forms of happiness to be found in the world. Strangely, despite all of the negativity surrounding this creature, there also exist a few who are ultimately benign and friendly in their nature, seeking only to help others, particularly young children, as they face their fears and come to terms with the essential difficulties found in the world, although such dragons are rare and difficult to encounter. Frequently, the agents or avatars of evil, smiting a dragon is often considered a noble and just act in any circumstance. Their valuable chemistry and caches of wealth make them a tempting target, not to mention the prestige that comes with felling such a powerful and deadly foe. As a consequence, dragons are quite rare and often reclusive, becoming distrustful of humans and often preemptively defend themselves from the threat we pose. As can be seen, the dragon is a myriad beast, from the primitive animals that stalk our skies to the wise seekers of truth and all shapes and sizes in between. It can never be said that one should judge a dragon by its nature. Their personalities are as varied and complex as our relationships with them, certainly an enigmatic and awe-inspiring creature, if ever there was. The dragon is an incredibly popular creature, and it permeates the marrow of all cultures the world over, from ancient European and Chinese dragons all the way to the more modern, albeit essentially different representations of them. The scope and magnitude of its effect on and presence in culture is undeniable. From powerful enemies in various games media to allegories for tyrants and terrible rulers in film, and even occasionally as metaphors for the darker and more maligned aspects of the human condition in books, the dragon has found its way into almost every mystical or allegorical story and legend that has ever been told. Indeed, any kind of fantasy story, even those primarily focused on politics, would feel incomplete without even a passing reference to the existence of these creatures. Such is their importance to our capacity to imagine. Indeed, this matter has grown to such a degree that even in the 18th century many thinkers were concerned at how abundantly represented this creature had become, with individuals such as Denis Diderot saying, "There are already in books all too many fabulous stories of dragons." The popularity of the dragon is undeniable, which begs the question, how could this lone mythical beast become so popular throughout the world? Initially, we may consider the spread of religion, particularly Christianity, which often depicts the end of the world involving a dragon, who is also the embodiment of Satan. Indeed, considering Christianity boasts over 2 billion members in its fold, it would not be surprising to find the creature's fame being born from here. However, the Christian dragon is not a focal point within that culture, and we might ask why other creatures mentioned in the Apocrypha, such as the behemoth and Leviathan, despite being famous, have not become nearly as popular as the dragon. Indeed, the dragon in ancient Christian culture is not as frequently occurring as we might expect. With only 36 mentions of the dragon throughout the entire Bible, 13 of which are found in Revelations, it's surprising to think that this incredibly popular creature is so rare in a book exceeding over 2,000 pages. Asian dragons with their serpentine form are quite important in Asian culture. Famously, they belong to the Chinese zodiac and generally tend to be gods of the sea and water, much in contrast with the European versions. Indeed, this goes a long way to demonstrating how these otherwise separated cultures developed this creature independently. What's more is that the spread of ancient pagan beliefs in Asia may equally account for the overall spread of the dragon myth in that region of the world, meaning that we cannot look to Christianity as the sole distributor of this myth. Rather, we would consider a more modern source of the dragon's popularity, a field of research which didn't exist in biblical time: paleontology. In the mid-19th century, the biologist Richard Owen came to the realization that the various fossils people had been discovering around the world were in fact the extinct remains of ancient reptiles. Naming these creatures dinosaurs, he sparked a massive interest in the discovery and research of these fascinating monsters. Around the same time, the book boom of the 18th century was growing ever greater by leaps and bounds. More published works, including fictional ones, were being produced than ever before in human history. This is a trend which continues through to this day with the mass production of media. The book boom, combined with the discovery of dinosaurs at this exact time, most certainly inspired authors to include the myth of the dragon in their novels to capitalize on the popularity and excitation generated by the real-world examples of similar beasts. Indeed, if we consider how important the dragon is in modern times compared to other equally functional mythical creatures, this coincidence seems like it could well explain why the dragon is as popular as it is today. Simply looking at mentions of the dragon throughout the ages on Wikipedia, see a massive increase in the 20th century that is precluded by a sudden century's worth of fictional material about this creature. Indeed, it would seem that the popularity and ubiquity of the dragon is tied very closely to that of the dinosaur, each growing to become independent cultural touchstones the world over, with the former growing in popularity through the compound force of each new publication featuring it in some way, and developing into a creature that will be with us for a very long time. With such a ubiquitous cultural appeal and many cultures developing this myth independent of each other, it is particularly difficult to identify a single origin for this creature. Working backwards, we have seen how the modern dragon is heavily influenced by dinosaurs. However, the myth of the dragon had existed long before Richard Owen had ever laid hands on his first fossils. So we turn to the oldest myths in the world's cultures to find where the mighty dragon may have come from. Initially, we would consider that cultures independently of each other would, upon discovering fossils similar to those Richard Owen once held, might envision myths of the dragon, and to a certain extent this may be correct. But it's hard to imagine that ancient people may reach the same conclusions about the dinosaurs and the dragon's seemingly reptilian nature without the aid of modern taxonomy. Although this would seem to be the case in 300 BC China, where the historian Chiang Ku labeled a fossil of some sort as a dragon. However, this is unsatisfying. As we have seen with many other mythical creatures, there is often a misascribed or mythologically mutated real-world creature that grew distorted from what the original author was attempting to explain. With this in mind, we might consider other reptiles such as the crocodile as the source of the myth. A creature often encountered by Indo-European peoples, the crocodile would certainly leave those people in awe of its size and ferocity. The crocodilian itself is a well-known species of reptile that can be found all over Asia and parts of the Middle East, as well as large swathes of America. Considering how widespread it is, it's not difficult to see how the dragon myth might be independently developed all over the world by people encountering the various crocodile species in existence. Indeed, if we compare the Asian dragon as a type of sea god with the crocodile, we find many more similarities, such as the size, environment, and general appearance of these creatures. Although this might lead one to think that the crocodilian is the sole originator of the dragon, there is a disparity in the Asian myth, which is the length of the dragon compared to that of your average crocodile. Despite its size, the crocodilian doesn't possess the same serpent-like features as the Asian dragon, which leads us to consider one more creature as the progenitor of the dragon myth, the snake. Several snake species in Asia are amphibious, and when we observe the appearance and spread of the myth of the dragon queen, Naga, throughout Asia, it's not difficult to see their dragon being primarily inspired by the snake, more specifically, some form of python. Indeed, returning to the West, we can perhaps find an explanation for the dragon's ability to breathe fire in the form of various spitting cobras. What's more is that we see ancient depictions of dragons as being rather smaller than in modern times, rather similar in size to what we would expect from snakes. In fact, the Christian conflation of Satan, serpents, and dragons lends more weight to this possibility. Alas, there are few other possibilities than the serpent and crocodilian that would otherwise explain the ubiquity and general similarities between the world's dragons. Barring a discovery of some hitherto unknown beast, we shall have to accept these two creatures as the primary progenitors of the dragon. Although, who knows what strange creatures we may yet discover hiding in the dark corners of the world. It is a strange thing to think that a mythical creature may possibly exist, yet the dragon is surprisingly not entirely out of the realm of reality. The fossil record is littered with large reptilian-like creatures in the form of the Dinosaurians, some of which are capable of powered flight in the same way as the dragon is depicted. Indeed, considering that dinosaur fossils are one of the influences in the origin of the dragon, it is not surprising that we would see such similarity between myth and reality. As seen with the behemoth, a massive size for mythical creatures is not beyond the realm of possibility. However, considering that the dragon is capable of flight, this size would work against it, especially if we imagine the dragon reaches such sizes as often depicted in fiction. Nevertheless, dinosaurs once more prove that such a feat is possible for large creatures. Employing hollow bones and massive membranous wings, creatures such as the pterodactyl show us a potential means for the dragon to come into existence. Considering that dinosaurs are a potential inspiration for this creature, then it makes sense to model it upon dinosaurs. However, there do exist more fantastical options for reifying the dragon. Therefore, given free rein over biology, we could employ tungsten carbide as bone material. With incredible strength, this metal composite as bone would require very little material to give rise to our dragon. What's more is that the conditions under which this compound forms are quite extreme. The dragon would be tethered to hot environments such as volcanoes and other geothermically active areas. This would also have the mythological upshot of bringing it more in line with our fantastical image of the creature inhabiting such places naturally. However, justifying the creature's igneous breath is a bit more difficult. Nevertheless, there are reifications prior to this one which have already explored the matter. Of particular interest is the depiction found in a television movie entitled The Last Dragon, a fantasy made real. Similar to the mermaid docudrama, this film explores the dragon as though it were a real creature, and goes a long way to reifying it. As such, any reification of the dragon attempting authenticity cannot help but acknowledge this film. Indeed, it is certainly worth watching. In summary, The Last Dragon postulates that the dragon could be an ancient reptile that possesses a hydrogen-filled flight bladder that, combined with a platinum craving, allows the dragon to catalytically breathe fire, in addition to giving it atmospheric buoyancy. Not only does this image explain the creature's covetous nature, as it would naturally desire precious metals, but it very satisfactorily explains why the creature might also prefer places such as volcanoes and mountains, as they readily discharge or possess heavier elements on the surface. By combining these two images, we are left with a powerful creature capable of breathing fire and able to fly despite its large size. With hard bones and an insatiable appetite for precious metal, we can see that the dragon is perhaps well within the realms of possibility. Finally, we are left to consider the creature's relative level of intelligence, which can easily vary depending on what we might imagine. As the biology behind intelligence is not well understood at this point in time, we can, for the time being, ascribe any level of intellect to the dragon as we so desire, making for an enigmatic and fascinating creature. However, despite this far-fetched, though somewhat possible imagining of the dragon, the mere fact that others have attempted to reify it serves only to demonstrate how essential this creature is to the world's cultures. And though dragons do not exist, the thought that some dragon-like creature may well be possible should give us pause before considering where next we should explore.